I do not agree politically with many things that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders say, and I certainly am not expecting to be voting for them this fall. But can we just stop for 1 minute and talk about how much the Republican Party has shattered its brand by comparing Democratic debates, which for the most part overwhelmingly have been focused on issues that matter to Democratic primary voters, versus Republican Party debates, which focus on the size of hands, personal insults, the size of suggestions about the size of body parts that we won't even mention on this morning news show. The contrast is absolutely staggering. And as a Republican, I've got to tell you, it's extraordinarily depressing.
Joe, the Republican debates thus far have been embarrassing. The Democratic debates, on the other hand, have been enlightening. And last night's debate was no different than the other Democratic debates. They were on issues. Both candidates, Bernie Sanders and Mrs. Clinton, were strong on the issues with their points of view. And by far, at least I think to a lot of people, the Democratic race is now the more interesting race, and especially for Hillary Clinton. There are two electoral maps that are instructive as to how the difficulty her campaign is now in the middle of coping with. One is from Massachusetts and the other is from Michigan. Democratic strongholds, in a sense, both, especially Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders carries across the board, working class people, young people, on all the issues that he's talking about. He garners a huge majority of their votes, while Mrs. Clinton, despite being in politics for 30 years, has trouble addressing her message to that group of people, and she's losing them. That does not bode well for her in the fall.
And it doesn't mean she's going to lose the nomination. I mean, the numbers are there, but what this is doing is exposing exactly the weaknesses that could hurt her in the general election, or she could deal with it immediately. Well, she could deal with it immediately by bringing some people on board that represent this message.
Yeah, she did address part of it last night, Steve, in the question when she said, you know, she's just not a natural politician. She's not like her husband. She's not like President Obama. And she talked a bit, it was sort of self-revealing, about the difficulty she does have on the stump.
Yes, and there's no question about that, and I'm glad she said that. But look, I think she's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place a little bit, because you do have in both parties these angry, unhappy group of people who are pulling their candidates in a certain direction. And in the Democratic Party, she's being pulled to the left on trade, on immigration, on all these issues. And I actually worry that when she gets into the general election, it's going to get tougher for her the further she's pulled away from what I think is still a centrist country in a lot of ways.